Good evening, everyone. Welcome. This is the Town of Somers Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. The date is October 19th, 2021. Denise, would you please take the roll?
Ms. DiPolito?
Here.
Mr. Guillaume?
Here.
Mr. Harding?
Here.
Mr. Lansky?
Here.
Mr. Newman?
Here.
Chairman Canestra?
Here.
Thank you.
I'd request everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. So we're going to go right to the first item on the agenda this evening. This is the matter of Andrea Matias. Hopefully I'm spelling your name right. This is an application for a deck addition for less than the required lot size, rear yard setback, and lot coverage to an existing one-family dwelling in an R10 residential district at 18 Carpenter Place, Yorktown Heights. Is someone here to represent the applicant?
Good evening. My name is Bob Eberts. I'm from Cross River Architects.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Sure.
We've all received the packet and the site plan. Could you briefly explain your application that's before us this evening?
Yes. Would you like me to keep the mask on while I speak? It's your choice.
Unfortunately, you have to.
No problem.
Yeah.
Okay. So the property that we're, you probably need me to stand in front of this, don't you?
You could take the microphone out.
Take the microphone out.
The property that we're talking about is 18 Carpenter Place. It's in the Shenorock area of Somers. The property is in the R10 acre zone, so it requires 10,000 square feet. Now, the owners have a single-family house on the property, and they also have an accessory above-ground pool that was put in a year ago. Now, what they would like to do is add a deck between the house and the pool. Now, this deck is about 355 square feet, and it spans about 20 feet deep and 14 feet wide. So the reason that we're here today is we're applying for 3 variances. The first variance is pretty straightforward. The lot itself is under the 10,000 square feet. So it's 9,750 square feet, so we're 250 square feet shy. So we're applying for a variance because we're doing work in that non-conforming property.
Right.
Here's where things start to get a little unclear. Now, I don't know if this is the board's typical approach when you're working in a non-conforming lot. Does every project, even if it conforms with the other zoning, require a variance in a non-conforming lot?
Has the lot already been approved?
The lot's been approved.
And there's a house there?
There's a house there. It's been, you know.
Pre-existing non-conforming.
Right.
Existing non-compliant.
Well, I'd be curious what our building inspector's interpretation is, but I guess that's what I'm curious about.
I believe the improvement requires the variance that are set forth this evening,
But
being that it's existing non-conforming property, lot size, lot coverage, and setback.
Would he have to come before us, though, no matter what he did, even if it wasn't a zoning issue, because the lot is undersized? Like if he wanted to,
Yes.
add an addition on the house that's, going up, let's say, and not changing lot coverage or anything else, he would have to come before us because the lot is non-conforming size.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
To expand the footprint of the home, I would say yes. To go up on without expanding the footprint, I would say no.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, if it's your interpretation, clearly that we need this, we've applied for it. I don't think it's a substantial variance in any way. So that's the first application we have before you.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with the deck that we're proposing, but it just has to do with the existing property. Again, we're not changing it. The second variance that we're requesting is a rear setback variance. Now, the existing house has a deck on the back of it. I'll point it out in the rendering. It's this light beige area. And that existing deck is 21 feet, I'll say 21 feet and change. It's indicated there exactly, the dimension, from the rear property line. So already that deck is non-conforming. There's a 25-foot rear setback requirement for a principal building. The pool that was put in, the accessory pool, is 9 feet from the rear property line, 9 feet and change. So what we're requesting is a variance for the new deck of 13 point, I have my glasses on. Does it say 5'3"? I think it does. 5'3" feet. So to the rear property line. And we're requesting a variance, on that basis. So again, it's a rear property line. 25 feet for a 12-foot approximate variance. I would consider that a substantial variance. But does it affect the neighbors in any way? No, I don't believe it does. The property is surrounded, property where the deck is going, is surrounded by retaining walls. Property is actually very low in that area. There's a two-story house next to it. There's a fence on top of the retaining walls all around the property. There's also shrubs surrounding the left side and rear that are so thick you can't see through them even in the wintertime. So I don't think this affects the neighbors in any way. I don't think they'll be able to even tell that the deck is there. This is lower than the existing deck. The existing deck is at the first floor level of the house. We're stepping down approximately 4 feet to be at the level of the top of the above-ground pool, which is about 4 feet above grade. So that's where the surface of the deck would be. So again, I don't think the neighbors would see that.
What's underneath the deck? Is it just
earth, gravel.
earth? Okay.
Yeah.
Is the deck pervious?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But again, this, I don't want to jump the gun a little bit, but this again goes to a question. Is this the principal, is the deck a principal use? Or is it a principal building that has to conform to the principal building setback? Or is it an accessory? Trouble is your code is not at all clear. We've talked about this, Tommy and I, at length. And unfortunately, there's just no definition in the code. So it really comes down to either what the zoning officer decision is or what the board has used historically or decides tonight. I did some research in adjoining towns. In most cases, the decks are not included in the principal building. But here, I don't want to speak for you, and I'm not challenging you. Believe me, I'm not challenging you in any way. I just want to try to get clarified, do we need the variance? And if we need the variance, we've applied for it. That's all. And I want you to understand the issues that we've talked about.
Now, I do have one question for you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes, sir.
If I understood your presentation to the board, the existing deck is going to be removed and the new deck is going to be lower than the existing deck to match the height of the swimming pool?
No, sir. The existing deck is remaining. There is a stair that comes down the side of the existing deck that will be removed, a stairway. But the deck itself is staying intact.
Okay.
So the new stair is going basically where the, down to the lower level deck is going where the stair was removed.
Thank you.
But the existing deck is staying intact.
Mr. Tuma, was the above-ground pool built subject to a permit?
Yes,
Okay, and it was permitted and approved?
yes.
Okay, and so was it considered to be a structure at the time, subject to a variance? So it wasn't referred to the board at the time, was it?
The pool is not.
So, because
You're talking about setback.
I'm talking about setback, but I know different boards and building departments do all this very differently, and I often compare it to how people interpret different sects in the religion interpret the same Bible. But in my take, if you have a pre-existing lot, you wouldn't need a variance. But if someone wants to request a variance, and it's our policy that they request a variance for there, I would have a very hard time denying that variance for an existing property. I think we would be setting a terrible precedent if we were taking a lot which was already approved and then denying a variance on it. Similarly, if we have a pool, which is the closest structure, and it's already been approved and someone's already gone through a certain process to do it and done everything legally, I would have a very hard time rejecting that variance for the setback on that pool. So that's just my vantage point on it.
Sir, if I may, we're not applying for a rear variance on the pool.
Okay.
Tom, again, I don't want to speak for you. I'm not. But we discussed this and determined that the pool in the zoning ordinance is considered an accessory use to a residence. So therefore, we considered it, you considered it, I believe, an accessory structure. Am I correct?
Yes.
So that has a separate setback requirement. So the pool, which is 9 feet away from the rear property line, is not included in the variance.
Okay. Thank you.
It's just the,
Just the deck.
just the deck.
Just the deck,
is what
because
it's-
we're interpreting the deck to be not accessory,
Not-
and rather
not
part
that-
of the principal structure, so subject to the
Right.
principal structure setbacks.
Right.
I understand now. Thank
Oh,
you.
Okay. If I may continue with the third?
Sure, go right ahead.
So the third, it gets a little more complicated. Apologize for this, but the third is for lot coverage. Now, on your, if you don't have have it, I have extra copies of the zoning table. Might help you follow along. If you don't have it on the drawing, it's in the drawing, posted to the front of the drawing. So, and again, discussions with Tom, you know, what's, the code lists the lot coverage of a principal building, very unusual. It, let me just open it up and indicate what it says here. Sorry.
Yeah, I think for an R10 district, the principal building is at 18%. And then accessory buildings at 7%.
Yes.
That's under the existing code.
Yes, but the question is, it doesn't say, it says principal building coverage. See, it doesn't say lot coverage. It doesn't say impervious. It doesn't, so again, what's your principal building? So in discussing it with Tom, what he's determined, I believe, is that lot coverage includes the existing house and the front porch, and the front porch does not have a roof on it. Includes the existing deck. It includes the existing walkways and the existing patios, including the patios back away from the residence. The existing driveway, the new deck as well. So if we total all those together that I've just listed, again, not including the pool because that's accessory, it comes out to 38% of lot coverage. Now, it might be interesting to note that the house alone is 22% of the lot. So already we're over there without considering the existing deck, the walk, the driveway, any of that. Now again, I am asking the board, in fact, is a driveway part of a principal building is when calculating lot coverage? Is the walks or the decks front porch. Again, this is what we talked about this at length, and this is, you know, because the code is not clear, it leaves it up for Tom to say, hey, I'm not making a mistake. I'm going to include everything that
Can I ask a
that I
question
can.
to our Denise?
Yes.
Are we noticed for an interpretation of the code? Is that an issue for you?
I don't know if I understand your question.
So, the notice that I have here is that applicant is looking for some variances. I don't know if applicant was looking for an interpretation of the code and whether there's a notice issue or not.
No, these are the 3 variances.
They're asking for a 20.18% variance
So-
on lot coverage.
So, but Mike, and I haven't been on this board long enough to know how we do things. But in some boards, if they're gonna do an interpretation, the secretary or the board requires that their public have notice of that, so comment can be done on that.
We have had applications come before us asking for an interpretation of the code, and it's noticed like any other application before us. But that has not
My
occurred
issue
here.
is the issues which you speak of, sir, the board has been discussing at length, because there are varying interpretations among board members, and there has been some recommendations that we send something to the town board regarding this, and we actually a couple of us went to a town meeting regarding this very issue that you have raised. But what I'm hearing, and I don't want to speak for anyone, is that it's not really in front of us. You're asking us about an interpretation, but if we don't have that officially in front of us, I don't know if we can do anything about that. So.
Right, so the answer to the question is yes, that's the current interpretation.
Okay, if that's the current interpretation, that's the variance that we've applied
that's
for.
That driveway,
That's-
patio,
building
all of it's
That's the
included.
building inspector's interpretation, and for you to get an interpretation from the zoning
I'm
board.
not challenging that. I'm not challenging
have
his
to ask for
interpretation.
that. You'd
And
have-
we've
you'd have to have
made
notice.
the application on that basis. But I guess what my concern is, as a resident, 44-year resident of town, I've worked in Westchester for many, many years. I'm concerned that the board may make a decision to include a driveway in a principal building. And if that's the case, we're fine with it. We've made our application, and we'll move on with your, based on your decision. But is that what you're going to determine going forward? Let's make a case in point. Let's take a hypothetical. Front yard. If the driveway is part of the principal building, what's the front yard setback on the principal building? You see, then every house needs a variance on that basis. And again, this is your area, and
Yeah, this board is looking at lot coverage issues because we do understand the problem that many of the properties exceed the current lot coverage in town over what the code has.
right.
So almost every application may have this problem. That's why this board right now is having discussions. We're going to make a recommendation to town board to maybe look at this issue because we do think it's a significant issue. But town board will have to be the one to change the code. We don't write the code. We, look at the code, interpret the code, make reasonable variances from the code. And the problem this board has had is that we had another application recently where a significant variance was requested. And whether we think personally that may be reasonable or not, we can't just say, well, we don't like the code, so we're going to do something different. We have to follow the code, provide as minimal reasonable variances from it as possible. But when the variance becomes significant, that's when the board has to really reflect, should we be doing that absent a change in the code? So you understand what our...
And also, no one's asked the board for a specific interpretation of a specific question. So
Okay, fair
that's
enough.
the other piece of that.
Fair enough. I'm not. Maybe I'm straying beyond my my license here.
Yeah, no, this is the issue. We understand the issue,
Yeah.
and you're bringing up an issue that we are very much aware of.
Well, I want you also to understand that again, that 20% variance that we're requesting, again, I would say that's probably a substantial variance in your mind. And,
Right.
and yet it includes things that the author of the code may not have considered at that time. That's all, that's my point in its entirety.
We certainly understand that there could be some more clarity in the code, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of,
Right. So I think I'm done with
Is
my
there any
presentation unless you
particular
have any
rush to
questions.
get this done?
Sorry?
Until we get clarification of our proposal for a new code change?
Well, obviously, the owner is looking to move ahead with the project.
yeah, because, we're going to make recommendations to town board. They have to review it. They have to have, public hearings on it. So it could be a few months.
It could be,
I mean, we are moving into the winter, so,
well, what have
a
you
deck and a
done?
pool maybe is used a little less, but I'm just, saying, I don't want to tell you what to do with your application.
Right, because there may be a change which would work in your favor on the lot coverage variance.
Because I personally would deny my vote until we get a clarification of our proposal for lot coverage.
Well, right, it's unlikely that the lot coverage variance, I would imagine, it would be unlikely that I would vote in favor of a lot coverage variance of that size tonight. But in the future, you may have an easier time getting that.
I see.
We have to stay, we have to stay true to the code. The code is the zoning law. We have to follow that. Like I said, we can give reasonable variance, but we're supposed to be as minimal as possible. When the variance becomes significant, we have to really take a hard look.
And I appreciate that this.
Yeah, because we can't just,
Yeah.
even if we personally feel that we don't like the code, we're not the writers of the code. That's not our job, so that's the town board's job. Yeah. So, I just bring that up to you, and, any decision here by the board, you'd need 4 votes to, get
Right.
a decision one way or another, yeah.
May I confer with my client for just a moment?
Sure, absolutely.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem.
So it's your understanding they need to ask for an interpretation ahead of time, and it needs to be noticed?
Yes.
That's our policy?
Yes, yeah, they would, yes, an interpretation of the code would be just like any other application. You make an application for interpretation.
But they could certainly decide to put it off for the next meeting, have it noticed, and ask for an interpretation of the code.
Or they could just put their application on hold until
Yeah?
it works its way through town board. Town board may decide, we want to keep it as is. I don't know. Yeah, that's up to the town board.
But it may be that if we all looked at the code, we may have a different idea.
The code is ambiguous though in a lot of this.
It is.
It's hard to,
You can't say you need a setback from a driveway from itself,
I would agree.
right? So that you can't go to certain conclusions.
Right, I would tend to agree. Yes, sir, do you have something else you'd like to add at this point in
Could
time?
we table the application and have it carried
We
for a
can.
number of months?
We can, and that might be a good option for you based on our pending analysis here and recommendation to town board and waiting their decision. That,
Now,
I don't want to tell you what to do, but, that is a very reasonable position to take as a tabling of this.
well, obviously, they want the deck for the summer. They don't really need it this winter with the pool there. But,
Right.
so, we could wait till maybe January or February.
I mean, we're looking to get this to town board as soon as possible for them to look at it and proceed if they deem that appropriate. Town board is who decides on the zoning code, obviously.
We're proposing a relatively small deck, just 355 square feet.
Right.
If we were to reduce that, would that change your mind? It wouldn't reduce the percentage very much, but what we're proposing is relatively small.
We understand your position. It's just that I think you're getting a feel from the board that it's a substantial variance that's being requested. If it goes from 20 to 17%, is that going to change a lot? I don't know.
So,
I would still think it's pretty substantial.
Right, especially-
well, with the,
It's not inappropriate for the lot, but it is inappropriate as a variance of this magnitude for me. And I know there's a lot of this out there, which is why we were trying to address it. Yeah, no, it's,
Right.
And we may be sympathetic, but
Yeah.
the code is the law that, you know, we've taken an oath to follow, and, you know, this is what we...
Now, it's unfortunate that you are the first applicants to come in front of us while we're trying to change the square footage of a lot usage. And until things get ironed out completely, I'd like to, you know, if all possible, if you could hold it over, I would, you know,
Then we would like to
Like
hold
that.
that over if possible. Could we come back in January?
Hopefully something will be done. I mean, you can touch base with the building department, and they'll let you know as things progress through town. I can't tell you how quickly town board can review this. There's an election coming up, and, you know, I don't know how quickly that can be addressed, so.
Yeah.
I'm sure, hopefully town board will get on it and take a look at it, but I think they have to have public hearings on it and things like that to get input from the community, so.
Well, it's unlikely that they're going to make a formal decision, you know, in the next year, probably. I don't want to, you know, I'm not,
Yeah, I
Privy to
can't
the-
tell you how quickly
Yeah,
it
but-
will move through.
but at least that you might have a direction, you know,
Yeah.
for what's
And
included and what's
if
not.
not, your option is to ask for an interpretation and come back on that basis.
Thank you. It's a
Do
good
you,
point.
do you want to see if there's any comments?
I do, I want to, yeah.
Yeah.
So, if you're done right now, sir, is there anybody here from the audience that wishes to speak in regard to this application? Yeah, sir, could you come up to the microphone? Just give us your name and address and just, you know,
Edward Baldwin, 20 Carpenter Place, I'm the neighbor,
okay.
all right?
Yes, please speak into the microphone.
Sure.
I'm sorry about
Concerns
the
that I
mask.
have is, first of all, I didn't know what was going to be built. I just received the notice,
Right,
all right? However, there's a retaining wall that runs along the side of the perimeter of the property, which is decayed. With the pool on there so close to retaining wall, I'm having concerns, you know, and building extra structure. And, you know, that's where I'm at right now. Before we go any further, you know, the retaining wall, I feel, should be repaired, since it's, you know, since it's so close.
okay, and are you on that side of the property with the retaining?
Actually, may I just point out?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Okay. I'm right about this perimeter right here, running along the side,
Okay, so that, and are you above or below this property?
below.
You're below it?
Yes.
Okay,
and how high is the retaining wall?
Retaining wall, I would say, is approximately 6 feet, 7 feet. In some areas, it depends on where you go.
12 to
It's
6.
a-
And
It's a
you're,
hilly area.
and
so
you're
depending
concerned
on-
about the retaining, and it looks like the retaining wall is on the neighbor's property, not yours?
Correct.
Okay.
The retaining wall, is it
It's-
pressure-treated wood, is it stone?
It's wood. It's pressure-treated wood, which over the years actually decayed.
Okay. Okay, well, yeah, a
Other
safety
than
issue
that,
like
those are the
that.
only concerns I have.
Okay, okay, well, we're glad you brought that to our attention, and that's something that, you know,
All right,
the
thank
homeowner
you.
should address, especially if it's a safety issue. Okay, thank you. Anybody else here wish to speak in regard to this application? No? The applicant, any further comments at this point in time? Does the board have any questions of the applicant at this point in time, or
No, I don't.
no discussion? Anything else you had to say, sir, or?
No, I think we've gone over that.
I do have a question for the applicant, since it's just been brought to our attention about this retaining wall.
Sir, could you maybe just come up to the microphone and just give us your name and address for the record, just so we have it?
Gene Mizzuli.
Do you have any intention of replacing this wall?
I looked at it with Ed, and I tried to shore up the parts that were decaying with some steel beams. I got a gentleman who lived right down the street who's a landscaper, and he works with railroad ties. They're railroad ties stacked on top of each other, and a couple go in.
Well aware, worked with it myself.
Right. And he never got back to me on when he could do it. He said he's very busy. It was in the middle of the pandemic, and, you know.
But as a good neighbor, you have all intention of correcting or
I mean,
correcting the problem?
I mean, there's two ways I could do it, right? Either ripping the whole thing down, which is super expensive, and, I mean, they're super heavy. I don't, you're saying you lifted a railroad tie, right? Each one's got to weigh close. I can't even move one, and I could lift pretty, much weight. Or just, we were actually looking at a fence, vinyl fencing to put up against it with reinforced steel columns, and then the fencing in front of that. Because they told me after 10 years, I mean, that's been there since the house has been built, that the dirt isn't gonna move. It's been in place for so long.
Because even though it's not in front of us for the retaining wall, it's a safety issue. And, on an overall, from neighbor to neighbor.
Right.
You should get along and work together,
Oh, yeah,
which
yeah,
sounds
I'm-
like you
I'm-
will.
I'm trying. Like I said, I
okay?
went there with
And,
someone.
it's a safety issue, I think it should be addressed, even though it's not part of what's in front of us now.
Right.
Yeah, certainly you don't want that retaining wall to give away, especially if it's close to the pool, could affect the integrity of the pool there, too.
Yeah, it's pretty far away.
It's like
to be honest
15
with
feet,
you.
it looks
Yeah.
like, so that
Yeah.
may be far enough, but just something to think about, yeah.
We'll fix it, and we'll take care of it, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna take care of it.
Right, okay.
But like I said, I don't know which way we want to go. Reinforcing it and then just put a nice facial over it, and then not everyone's rotted out. Do we replace the whole thing? So we had different prices and different things.
Yeah, if the two neighbors can work together, kind of
That's the
come up
main
with a
thing.
mutual agreeable solution.
Yeah, I mean, it's on our property. We'll take care of it. It's it's on his property, but we don't even see it. That's the sad part, so.
Right. Kind of a necessary structure, though, yeah.
Right.
Okay, all right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Should we, I guess if they're gonna table this pending potential changes to the lot coverage, should we give them an indication on the setback? Like, we wouldn't want them to wait if we were gonna deny the setback anyway. Are the other variances?
Are you picking the variances apart now?
Well, there's two other variances, the lot size, the lot size and the setback, so.
Right. I mean, the lot size is 250 less than the R10 district. I think,
It's an approved lot.
yeah, it's pre-existing
So I
non-conforming.
agree. It's the setback, I think if we were gonna deny the setback, then the lot coverage wouldn't matter, so we should probably.
And the pool is closer than the deck.
The variance needed here is 13 and a half feet,
Right.
which is not, unsubstantial, but,
No, it's not, but with the pool being closer to the lot line,
And already
the
approved.
precedent's a little set in
right.
how far they
I
can
tend to
go.
agree with that, I just felt that we should give an indication.
that's a good
I mean, I guess if a neighbor complained too, they could always put some shrubs or something there between the property line if, that's.
Well,
that's
they're also higher,
Right,
right? If I understood the applicant, someone's below, they're not actually seeing that. They're seeing the retaining wall.
right.
So,
Is the lot behind you also below your property?
Actually, my house is just about right there as well. So even though the retaining wall is there, my house is probably, what would you say, about 8 feet from the retaining wall.
On the side of the property, though?
Yes.
Not on the back of the property, though?
On the side of my house.
You're at the side of your house, but I'm talking about the back of this property.
The back of this property facing towards sunrise, sunset.
to answer your question, Mr. Newman, I would take no exception to these setbacks.
Okay.
My issue is with lot coverage.
Okay,
I think
I
lot
agree.
coverage is the main issue.
fine then.
Yes.
Okay.
Will the board vote on those two, or no?
Well, I would say we have to look at the whole package at one time. I don't think we can vote on pieces without
Okay.
seeing the whole package.
I understand.
Things may change, I don't know, so. And even if we granted you 2 variances there without the third, you can't proceed.
We
so-
can't proceed anyway, but
Right.
we wouldn't have to reapply or whatever. Okay.
Well, this will be tabled, right? They won't have to file a new application.
No,
Right.
yeah.
It'll be tabled.
Yeah, until Bob said to bring it back on the agenda, I would just adjourn it.
How long can you table it for?
Sometime. I've seen applications
Oh, yeah,
tabled for some time.
Yeah. I mean, what I would say is just stay in touch with us, because, sometimes we have an applicant, we haven't heard from them in 3-4 months. We take it off.
I'll be in touch.
I'll be here next month, so.
You don't have to show up, but I'm just saying, if you
I've
just
got
keep in
another one
touch.
before you can
If you
let
could
that
just
one
keep
too.
in touch with our zoning board secretary and let us know what's going on, so that you haven't disappeared, because, we don't want to be tabling something and keeping it on the agenda and wasting time. so-
Appreciate that.
Okay. All right?
Thank you.
All right. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We will have to vote on the minutes, so I think we should just briefly discuss, so everybody can keep, if everybody could keep their application process here, so that when we see this applicant again, we'll have all the documents, will have to be
Yes,
reproduced.
save it.
Everybody will save it, yes. So I think we should discuss the lot coverage issues. Denise, I saw the most recent,
Are we going into executive session or are we continuing?
I don't know that we have to go into executive session. Would you prefer to go into executive session to discuss this, or?
I don't care. I'm just asking.
No, we'll leave it. Leave it open.
Want to just leave it open?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, straightforward issue, so. So, I was,
Can we do the minutes before we do this?
want to approve the minutes first?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I could do that.
Thank you.
Has everybody gotten a copy of the September 21, 2021 minutes?
Yes.
We did.
Okay, I'm just going to, any changes, comments, issues, concerns?
No.
No? All right, we're just going to approve by verbal consensus. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved for September 21, 2021. I will make mention, just so I don't forget, our next meeting is the third Tuesday in November, which is November 16th, 2021. I don't know if we have anything on the agenda at this point in time.
Bob will be back.
Okay, he'll be back. Okay, he wants to visit us
And then we
again?
also have a December meeting.
Okay,
I don't know what that date is.
okay, I don't have my calendar here, but it will be third Tuesday once again.
Correct.
Okay. All right, so why don't we just speak briefly about the lot coverage issues? I know there's been a lot of discussion about this. And I saw the most recent memo that was going out, and I see we've listed the current code and what is proposed.
Can I actually,
Sure,
I,
go right ahead.
when you came in, I started to say that everything's been out there and it's all in the email and we're pretty much of similar mind, but this gentleman brought up something which I had been thinking about, which is defining a little bit more what's accessory and what's not accessory. I don't know that we want to delve into that too much, but I just thought I would raise it as we're going through this.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of this exercise is definitely clarifying or defining exactly, because that's the problem, I think, in the code. It's like, what is a driveway? Is it part of the structure? Is it not? What's the lot, what are we looking at? Lot coverage, pervious versus impervious? So I think if we're going to propose this to town, we've got to be really clear. And I think that's important. Let me just bring up one thing. Tom, you had originally, I'm going back to an email that you had set up, and I really thought about it on July 27th, where, for example, in an R10 zone, you were talking about building coverage of 25% compared to what we have here of 18%. And I was thinking about it because if you, in an R10 district, if you allow the building coverage to be 18%, it's 1,800 square feet. And I'm thinking that 1,800 square feet isn't a really big footprint for a building, the principal building. And your percentage was 25%, which gives 2,500 square feet, because a lot of people nowadays like to build ranch houses where they're on one level. And I'm thinking then, if we have only 18% in an R10 district, that's 1,800 square feet. And then the question comes in, does that include, because a lot of times the building square footage doesn't include the garage. And if you add the garage in, and then if we add in other impervious,
Walkways, driveways.
right, walkways, driveways, we only have, and I realize total site coverage goes to 40%, but I just thought, and I'm thinking about this a lot, is that I just thought that, the basic building coverage, I think I'm more with Tom on this, in that I think that percentage ought to be higher.
Well, Bart, wasn't it supposed to be, I'm just looking at this, it was, the 25 comes from the 18 plus the 7. Didn't we agree to combine?
So you have to go to the definition of building coverage in this memo. The percentage of the lot area covered by the combined area of all buildings and/or impervious structures on the lot. So I'm saying, or we're saying, the decks are not building. So unlike the interpretation we have today, the deck is not part of the principal structure. So.
Nor is a driveway.
Nor is a driveway, nor is a patio. So
Okay,
that,
That was one of my questions. In your definition of proposed building coverage, it specifically excludes patios, walkways, driveways, even if they're impervious.
That's the way most towns do it. It's not building in most towns. So we have a site coverage number and we have a building coverage number. And granted, 1,800 square feet is not a lot for building coverage, but in R10, if you're thinking about it, and if you look at this site plan of this gentleman here, most people are gonna do a 2-story house on a 10,000 square foot lot. So that becomes a 3,600 square foot house. That's a lot of house on a 10,000 square foot lot.
Yeah.
I actually don't, and this is a little bit less than some of the adjoining towns, but if you look at what we're coming from, under our current interpretations and current code, this is a lot more gracious because we have plenty of room in site coverage. And so I wouldn't take exception if we wanted to raise the building coverage number slightly on 1 or 2 of these. And we would be closer to our adjoining neighbors if we did that by something. But when I did this, it was very specifically because we have some room in site coverage. So.
Yeah, and I certainly understand what you're saying, because the thing I was thinking about is if we allow 1,800 square feet, okay, and then let's say a 2-car garage, Tommy, what's the normal square footage on a 2-car garage? Would it be?
Usually 24.
By 24.
24, thereabouts.
So it's like 500 square feet maybe, something like that? Does that make sense?
You're talking about a garage under, within the dwelling?
Well, any 2-car garage. I'm trying to think.
They tend to be 600-700 square feet for a 2-car garage.
So if you have a 2-car garage on this lot and you take 600-700 square feet off of the 1,800, you have you literally have a 1,200 square foot house. I realize they could double that and go up, but I just think the footprint isn't large enough for the house.
But the lot's only
10,000 square feet.
It's only 100 by 100.
I know that.
So if you're running a house across that lot and it's 1,800 square foot and you're putting a 2-car garage on that, you're gonna have a tough time being within your setbacks. You really, to visualize it, you really want to look at this guy's house, because this is really kind of the classic example. If he were to have a garage on this thing, it would be here, and there would be the whole thing would be paved.
Yeah, I don't know what his house size is here, though.
Yeah, but just look at it. We can pull the house size, but this is kind of a standard thing.
I think it's up top, the existing structure.
Yeah, it's gonna be here, existing house and patio. Well, he's got it all. He's following our definitions. The other thing I would mention to you is there are not a lot of buildable R10 lots out there because we don't have much in the way of sewers. So you cannot, with existing Board of Health regulations requiring redundancy on septic systems, you can't build a house on an R10 lot without a sewer system. So, you know, what we're actually looking at is the vast majority of our existing lots out there are more likely to be 3-acre and 1-acre. Because this, to be able to do this again, isn't gonna happen until such time as we have sewers available. So it's a pretty much an existing stock question on the R10.
Yeah,
But if you wanna look at the charts for, and that's why we were focusing on the 1-acre versus the R10. And that gives you a 2,400 square foot house, primary house.
On an R10?
R40.
R40, right. R40 is 2,400 square feet.
Right, and then you have site coverage can be a total of 20%.
Which would be 8,000 square feet.
So that gives you your driveway, your deck, your everything else.
Right.
It fits, but it's not one of the more gracious codes in our area, but it fits. You can do it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if I look at building coverage for other towns, yeah, I don't know if these are R10 though. That's the, this is 1 acre residential lots.
1 acre is R40.
Yeah, yeah, R40. At an R40, okay, Bedford is 10%. We're at 6 right now.
Yeah.
Town of North Salem and Southeast is 20. Lewisboro is 12. Carmel and Yorktown are 15. So you can see our building coverage number is low compared to everybody else.
But right now, we're at 6% for the building and 3% for accessory, and we're calling everything part of the building.
Right.
So we're incredibly, if you.
We're taking things out of the.
So
Yep.
we're going from 6 plus 3 to 6 with a total of 20%. So we're actually making it feasible for people with this. And I don't, if the board thinks the 6% is too small, I was trying to be conservative because we're going from the chart above. We're going from 6 and 3 to 6 and 20. I didn't want to make it 8 and 20 or 10 and 20 because that's a huge jump. But that was the thinking.
Yeah, I mean, we did have one iteration there where we combined
Yep.
the accessory and the primary. And I
But the
think-
important thing, I think, is to get this memo off to the town and get it,
Well, it's got to be our best recommendation, though.
yeah.
Yes.
in the-
It's
in the
got,
chain
because,
of
you know,
command.
because they're going to take our opinion highly, and I want to make sure we're giving them the best opinion we can. I mean, it seems that in an R40 district, which is 40,000 square feet, you know, just a little less than an acre, every other town in the surrounding area is between 10 and 20%, and we're at 6. You know, it just seems, you know, I'm most concerned about the R40 and the R10. They just seem low to me. Now, Tom Tuma, our building inspector, for the R10, you had recommended, I guess, 25%, and for the R40, 9%. I don't know, what does
Just on
everybody think?
building.
Just on the building, yeah.
Was
I'm
that-
just talking
was
on the
that
building.
recommendation or just on building?
I believe so, I don't recall.
Which, and both of those
Want me
numbers.
to just show it to you real quick, Tom, just so you can, I know I'm, you know, there's so many charts that have run around here.
And both of those are equal to the principal plus accessory in the current chart. So you've combined them.
But
I don't know if that's coincidence or not, but
I don't know that he understood that the site coverage was separate. That we had plenty of room in the site coverage.
Yeah, Tom put together a chart, I guess, with building and site coverage right next to it. And his site coverage was less than our percentages. So his
I mean,
his building was higher and his site was less. It's just interesting, you know, I mean, and you know, there's no right answer here. It's a matter of what we think is reasonable. That's why I kind of figured out the square footage that he'd be covering, and I'm trying to think of the size of a house.
I mean, if you're looking at a standard house in a 1 acre zone, 2,400 square feet just for the house, most houses are 2 levels. That's a 4,800 square foot house with 2 levels, without anything else. I think you can make it fit. We could be more gracious if that's where the board wants to be.
Could I have that back, Tom, for you?
I mean, you'd actually, I mean, in some cases, right, where you didn't have,
Thank you.
would you be where people have accessory buildings and they were using that percentage, right, which they allocated to their accessory buildings, and they're using the full percentage for the principal, they're now losing, you know.
Not really, because they can't fly to their house, so there's still got to be a driveway. So, and we're not counting the driveway. So 6 and 3 is 9%, but you're still going to have a driveway. I mean,
So you'll hope that loss is offset by the gain on the driveway.
I'm saying that in most of our places, driveways tend to be at least 1,000 square feet. It's a big delta, particularly in Granite Springs and a bunch of the other communities. And really, if you're talking about new houses, most of our zoning for new stuff is bigger.
But they're not subject to these, because they're approved by the planning board.
Right.
Yeah, but at some point in time, the code should be the code. The planning board has a way to get around it, but doesn't mean that, and it may just be because of the interpretations that they're getting around it. It may not be that they want to do that.
So an unheated garage is still considered in the square footage for the principal structure,
If it's attached.
if it's attached, yeah.
Attached or under.
Well, we wouldn't even call it principal structure anymore, we just call it building coverage.
Right.
So it's all buildings.
Any buildings on the property, anything built.
Yes, that's where I was reading that definition. Buildings and/or impervious structures on the lot.
Yeah, even in an R40 district, which is an acre of land at 6% building coverage, that means 2,400 square feet is your footprint. So if you
Really?
have a two-car garage, your house on the main floor can't be more than, let's say, 1,900 square feet.
1,806.
Yeah, that's 1,800, yeah. It seems small to me.
Yeah.
That just seems, and especially nowadays, I can tell you, the most desired house out there is a ranch. People want ranches now because of one level, don't have to go upstairs, especially as they get older, you know. So, my recommendation would be to up the building coverage. Maybe not the site coverage, you know, that would be fine. But I think definitely, to give more access to the building coverage. And we're not including driveways, we're not including pools, but I guess a pool house would count, would a shed count? If they had a shed on the property, right? That would be a structure. A detached garage would count.
So I would,
I mean, I don't know, what do the other members
A
think?
pool is a structure.
well, we haven't defined structure, so what we have is the percentage of the lot area covered by the combined area of all buildings and/or impervious structures on the lot. So there are different interpretations of whether a pool is pervious or impervious. I think the correct definition is that it's impervious, but everyone does that differently. But let's leave that aside and for a second. I would be more than comfortable raising the R40, the R80, and the R120 a bit. I think 18% on R10 is probably, it's a lot, it's a lot to begin with. If you look at there, 1,800 square feet on a postage stamp is a lot. But I would be more than happy if we wanted to go up by a couple points on all the other ones, if that's what the board is inclined to do.
Yeah, I think my opinion would be on the R10 to go to at least 20% and a little bit more on the R40 and R80s. Yeah,
I go along with that.
I just think the building coverage is so tight there. I think you're really encouraging to me very small houses, especially with a garage, that go up. But
Well, we're not talking about a lot of houses being built in R10s, but
right.
So it's not that great a question.
But even if
don't-
somebody wants to
just don't
expand their
think
house,
you should I just don't think you should be building big houses on.
Well, the setbacks are gonna solve that problem for you,
to
Yeah.
some regard.
right?
Well,
Setback.
they got to still comply with the
I mean,
setbacks.
You're still.
So,
You could put a big rectangle in the center of the lot.
right.
That's all. I mean,
Out to all
and then
setbacks.
I just, and if you look at what they do in the other towns, the R10s don't go up a lot, but I certainly would be in favor of raising the other numbers.
What are the R10s? Are we below the R10s in the other towns?
That's about where it is, 18%, 40% from my memory. We're about there. I thought we were low on the R40, R80. R120, I didn't really have a big issue with because, you're talking about 4%, but you got a lot of square footage there. But once again, if we wanted to go up by a couple points, we wanted to go up to 8%, 7%, 5, and then 1 point on R120, 5%, that would feel right to me. And it's not a big issue to raise the R10, it just doesn't make sense to me.
I would second that. I mean, that R10, to me, I think is more building of the past, and if there's any building that's gonna be on an R10 in the future, it's gonna be a rebuild on that lot.
Like tear it down and rebuild
Like a
it.
tear down and rebuild. So, staying at the 18, adding a point and going up to 19, I think is fine for that size lot. Because I think that's not the attraction of Somers. I mean, people move to Somers, they're looking for land, they're looking for a house that has property. If they wanted smaller sized land, smaller house, they would stay down county. That the attraction to this area is having a house and having some land and being able to build a livable house.
Mm-hmm.
I think our code's is restrictive.
And of course, what we're doing is a recommendation to the town board. The town board may throw out everything we say and do something else. I mean, that's up to them. That's in their purview, obviously. You know, they're the bosses in regard to this issue, so.
So what were those, what were you proposing?
I'm proposing from R120, 5%, R80, 7%, R40, 8%, and R10 at the 18%. With no changes to site coverage, 12, 15, 20, and 40.
And if we made that 20 as a compromise, to Vic's point, would it matter?
I'm fine with it. I just,
Does 20 sound better there?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we could get to 20, at least it gives us a little bit more. So I think I'd be pretty happy with that. And we've kind of scooted up a little bit on the other ones. So we're talking maybe 5 in the R120, 7 in the R80, 8 in the R40, and then maybe 20 in the R10. It's up a little bit. We've gone up a couple points on each one. And we went up 1 point in the R120. I don't know, is everybody, this is a,
I think we submit it.
I think it's important that we get it done.
Yeah.
Do you think that's, and then what about the site coverage? Are we happy with the site coverage proposed here? I think I was 12, 15,
Sounds
20, and
reasonable.
40.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's kind of the,
Yeah.
Tom,
No, I think the
with
site
these
coverage
proposals
stays
that
the
we're
same.
trying to come across, what's your thoughts on that?
I think it's a good move, it's a good direction to go.
Yeah. Make building department's life much easier?
No.
let's not go that far. Their life is not easy there, yeah.
Well, I mean, to an extent, you're not gonna have to be sitting there calculating, every walkway and driveway.
That would help a little bit.
Some of it's gonna be
It would
more-
help the applicant as well.
Yeah.
Oh, and then I think we should hone in on these definitions here. So, I mean, the two things we're defining here is what is building coverage and what is site coverage. I think we should be crystal clear so that we don't have these continued debates as to what we're talking about here. So when we talk about building coverage, we're talking about buildings and structures that are impervious. Is that what we're talking about here? We're excluding patios, walkways, and driveways, even though they're impervious. Is that correct? Is that what the intent is?
They're not buildings.
They're not buildings.
Not buildings, right.
but they are site coverage.
They're part of the site.
I would certainly agree with that, right.
So
I mean,
what-
should we specifically say here, buildings do not include, so we're crystal clear, patios, walkways, driveways, and other non-structured impervious surfaces on the property?
Well,
I'm just trying to be very clear
Right,
to the
no.
town board. They can reword it in legalese or whatever they want to do.
And just to clarify, it also no longer includes decks,
Right, and decks.
because decks are pervious,
Right.
so they're
Now,
not,
what about sheds?
as long as they're larger than,
I guess that would be a structure, right?
That'd be a structure, anything over,
We have a proposed definition for structure as well. Anything which is constructed or erected which requires a location on or under the ground or attachment to something having such location, including but not limited to the following: any building, elevated deck, communication tower, tennis court, pool, but not anything which is less than 64 square feet in area and 8 feet in height. So that exclusion is there for dog houses. and-
Sheds, little sheds,
Yeah, really small sheds and,
that kind of,
64 square feet is 8 by 8.
yep, and a chicken house.
Yeah, we have people that have
We've had
chicken
that.
coops and, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, we
Right,
have
so-
that.
that's important.
They're not a structure. So,
Propose that, so,
that's what I did with that. And I did review a few different definitions for all of these, and I tend to think that more is not always more. I think that pervious and impervious are pretty clear terms. And I spent a little time here, and I would prefer not to list things, because when you list things and you miss something, then you have your ambiguity.
Then you have the interpretation of, is this meant to be an exhaustive list? Is it just meant to be an exemplary list? And we don't want the town board to get caught up in that.
Is an above-ground pool? Or is it a product? Is a shed that you get delivered from Mr. Shed the same, and it's just sitting on a block, or just sitting on the grass? So you tend to, when you do list, and I'm particularly not a big fan of list journalism for anybody who does that. When you just do lists, it tends to conflate things.
okay, so your definition of a structure, which would be in the category of building coverage, anything which is constructed or erected which requires a location on or under the ground or attachment to something having such location included but not limited to the following. On or under the ground.
That the underground would be considered a foundation, then, correct?
So you can either have a foundation or a slab.
That's a
Well,
structure, so a
but
car,
would a septic tank be considered a structure under the ground?
septic tank would not be considered a structure.
What about piping under the property? Would that be, that's
No.
under the ground? I mean, I'm just trying to be devil's advocate here, just so that we're clear on what we're talking about. And an in-ground pool, is that considered a structure?
That would be considered
It's
permanent
That's
structure.
actually specifically listed. Any building, elevated deck, communication tower, tennis court, pool.
Now, what about above ground pool? Because, sometimes I
That's a
look
great
at that
pool.
as,
That's a great question.
temporary.
Is an above-ground pool a structure? Does it require, is it constructed or erected and requires a location on or under the ground or attachment to something having such location?
Yes.
I
That
would
would fit that.
believe that an above-ground pool,
Would be.
they tend to have a little bit of metal channel, and that metal channel tends to get attached to something, and that's that.
You have a communications tower, you're talking about a cell tower.
Cell tower.
So pool or in-ground or above-ground pool.
Would both be structure.
Would both be structures.
So now here we're listing items where, you
We
know.
are.
I'm just,
I
you know, and
I could discern why I did that, but it's English, so, either you have a recommendation or.
Right.
And then we get into the things like rock walls.
Well, there is rock walls, there tends to be some things which are custom, right? A rock wall, of 3 feet or less is generally not considered to be anything. No permits are required, nothing.
Yeah, what if somebody builds a stone wall?
Well,
On the
that's
property.
what so in terms of how codes are interpreted, smaller rock walls aren't required, aren't considered to be structures, nothing changes. When you get to a certain height, you then get into different issues. And different towns interpret that differently, whether it's retaining or non-retaining. So that would be a Tommy question at that point in time.
Let me ask you this, what about kids' jungle gyms? Treehouse?
Treehouse is not attached to the ground. Treehouse you can probably get away with. A jungle gym,
Because some of these jungle gyms are quite elaborate with different things, and there's a lot going on there. And then I'm also thinking about like a fire pit too, like, how people build fire pits and they have like chairs
Sure.
around them and they do whatever.
Well, the fire pit would fall under the 64, would be less than the 64 square feet, so we'd
Yep.
be safe
Right.
there. The jungle gym, they don't tend to have large roof surfaces, in impervious surface.
And a lot of times
on
they're
them.
built on wood
They're
chips or
not-
something else, yeah.
Right.
They're pervious.
I've seen it when they have a little box in the park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's like.
Yeah.
But that, but the,
But does it fall under structure, which then puts it into the building coverage?
I think the,
I
you
don't
could,
think that falls under.
no, I would say no.
It's not,
I don't think so, but
And
I'm
the
just,
roo-
I'm
the-
being devil's advocate here, though,
The
yeah.
ones that do have some roofing or tarping on them would probably get exempted by the 64 square feet.
Well, the playhouses are exempt from permits.
Right.
It's written-
So I would say we would interpret them not to be included
Okay.
under this definition.
If it's not, yeah.
It's a good
Could we,
question.
could we say any non-permitted structure, or any non-permitted, like a chicken coop? Someone brought up a chicken coop issue,
why? do you
but it's
want-
under the 64 square, it's under
Do
this.
you want to make it circular? I'd rather it not be circular.
What do you mean circular?
So if you refer back to the code itself, from the code, in saying that something is permitted or non-permitted, you can start your circular iteration of the code.
You're defining structure and then saying within that definition.
Vision, go see this other definition.
Like, it's,
Right, I see what you're saying.
Chicken coops are generally going to be exempted by the 64 square feet,
Well,
generally.
You're
And if
only
they're-
allowed so many chickens, just, you know,
Right.
and you need to
And
have.
no roosters.
And you need to have at
No
least an acre of
roosters,
land.
I hear one every morning. But it's in the distance, and it's kind of pleasant in the distance.
Yeah.
I got chickens right on my street, right just down the hill from me.
right when you turn the corner,
With that
almost front of them.
definition, it's excluding the, under 64 square foot, structures. I could see an issue with that if we don't limit that, because somebody may want to put up 10 of those.
That's a good point. What if somebody puts up 10 sheds on their property of 8 by 8? Yeah, you know,
You could limit it in the definition
Well,
to maximum of 2.
There isn't.
It doesn't exempt them from this doesn't exempt them from a permit. If the code says you have to have a permit to build a shed,
From
lot
coverage.
coverage. They cover their whole lot with,
So there's a guy.
but you wouldn't permit,
Denise must have heard of this guy.
I wouldn't issue a permit for a structure of that size.
is there anything in the code now that prevents me from having 10 sheds if I have the lot coverage?
There is none.
Just common sense.
And people don't do it until now.
But there's a guy who's apparently got mufflers and all sorts of artwork, right, Denise?
Sculptures.
Sculptures. And one of his neighbors has done work for me, and he constantly calls me up and says, "Can you help me with this?" I said, "No." He's got artwork, right? I mean, you know who I'm talking about, Tom?
I know exactly what you're
Man's
talking
told
about.
me- Yeah.
Where, what's the location?
South Somers.
But so
now what if somebody built a huge art quote structure that was impervious and literally had a 500 square foot footprint?
if it's in, someone could build a metal tree, and it could have this wonderful big canopy, and it could be 500 square feet. And as
gets
long as it's
struck by
not,
lightning.
there's no externalities from it, which aren't impacted by the code. Hugh Hefner built a big middle finger. I mean, it's a famous
Yeah.
constitutional case. He put a big middle finger, and he was allowed to do that. He had the right to express himself. Not everything worked out well for him.
He's no longer.
But from a First Amendment perspective, that's allowed. And that's one of the things a lot of us cherish as Americans.
But I think we do have to think about, and what if somebody does all these small structures? What if somebody puts up 20 chicken coops on their property,
But no, there is
or
no,
20 dog houses?
So there is some odd 60 municipalities in Westchester, and I have not run into a code where someone has gone that far into it on this particular item and said you can't do lots of little things, because there are a lot of lower hanging fruit in our code if we wanted to fix our code that we could focus on. This is very clearly one. You can keep iterating and keep trying to find.
I'm trying to
these things,
cover all the bases here.
but you're not. And frankly, it'd be nice to have this completed and done. And there's going to be other things which are going to come in front of us where we're going to see other issues and things we want to fix. And if we get too hung up on one thing or another, we're not going to get to any of them.
You won't get anything done.
No,
So that's why,
you're never gonna be able to address every little nuance,
and no code does.
right, and I think we have to look at the town.
Unless the lot, does the lot coverage, or I'm sorry, does the site coverage or lot coverage take all this into account? Because if that's a limit, if that's the upper level, wouldn't that then cover it?
The percentage of the lot area covered by the combined area of all buildings, structures, impervious surfaces, and off-street parking, and loading facilities, including access drive, whether paved or unpaved.
So that would be the upper limit of
So
everything.
I would try to make.
That would be the safety.
I
That
try to make
takes
that
care of
pretty
your
inclusive.
10
That would make it
dog
so you don't
houses or
have
10 chicken
sheds.
coops.
No, but there is things in the code about how many chickens you can have.
There's also things
and
in the code about how many
animals
dogs you can have.
Right.
So, there are other limiting things.
Right.
What you just read was the current definition.
That's the current definition.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we
You're
have
right.
a site coverage number, that this is the upper limit of how much you can cover the lot for anything, then I think we have somewhat of a safety net, so you don't have craziness covering 90% of the lot with whatever.
So Tom makes a good point. I read the existing versus the proposed. That percentage of the site area covered by the combined area of all building structures and impervious surfaces, including impervious driveways, patios, and walkways. So I did a little less defining in there, but it's impervious surfaces.
And just to Vic's point, if we remove the 64 square foot exemption, then there would be ways to limit.
The lot coverage still
to
covers it.
sheds, and what would you lose by?
You would
removing
lose
it?
somebody having a little dog house.
It's not gonna affect their lot coverage if it's that little materially anyway.
But once it's a structure, Tom, don't we have other triggers in the code once it's a structure?
Because I think we're saying if it's something that small, it's not a structure.
If it-
Anything else, we
if it's
want
a-
to be considered.
If it's a structure, it's supposed to be on your site plan, no? Right? Once we call it a structure, we now have potentially setback issues, we now have potentially site plan issues. There's a reason, that exclusion is there for those purposes, so that somebody can put a little doghouse wherever they please. I don't have a dog, but, you know?
But what if people build,
In our environmental,
Yeah.
with our environmental regulations would prohibit a doghouse in a wetland or a steep slope, environmentally sensitive area.
but what if somebody made 5 8x8 dog houses and put them on the property?
You know?
But then again, you'd have to come in front of the zoning board to accommodate the 5 dogs.
I don't know how many dogs you're limited to in the town. I forget
There's
what the
got
code
to be a
says.
million ways other ways
Three
to
adults.
defend against that.
3
though.
adults?
Over 6 months.
So has the guy opened a business? So are we permitting a business on that property? I mean, there's many different ways to get at the problem. We don't have to get at it to the building code
To the zoning code, yeah.
or zoning code.
Can I see the back line just for a minute? So are we, well, let's talk about maybe what we're in agreement with. So we're in agreement with maybe building coverage going to 5, 7, 8, and 20, and then the site coverage as indicated here. And then I guess our question on the definitions, are we there on the definitions? So building coverage, that percentage of the lot area covered by the combined area of all buildings and/or impervious structures on the lot.
So that's gonna be the primary building, any accessory buildings, but does not include decks, which are deemed to be pervious.
Right.
That's my main question, is decks.
And then, so, okay. All buildings and impervious structures.
And that would include a shed above 64 square feet, would include a detached garage, a carport, anything that was a impervious structure.
Yep.
That's really where we want to be there.
Yeah.
How about a gazebo?
It's bigger than
Gazebo's a
64
structure.
square feet, yeah.
Unless it has too many Christmas lights.
Thanks.
All right, so the definition of building coverage or impervious structures. Okay, definition of a structure. Anything that is constructed or erected which requires a location on or under the ground or attachment to something having such location, including but not limited to any of the following. Any building, elevated deck, communications tower, tennis court, pool, but not anything which is less than 64 square feet in area and 8 feet in height. Okay, because remember in the definitions we have here, building coverage includes or impervious structures, then site coverage includes all buildings and structures.
Can I ask Tom a question? Is there instances where you consider stone walls to be structures? Have you?
If something were to be posted up off on a structure,
Okay, but a stone wall by itself, you've never considered to be a structure?
no.
Okay.
What was that last question you had, Vic?
And our code limits the height of walls to 6 feet, fences and walls.
Yep, but if they're retaining, then you count half?
Our engineering department gets engineered plans for walls 5 foot and higher.
No, I understand that, but in terms of height, a height of a retaining wall in many communities is not counted from the toe, but it's counted as half because half of it's below grade. You know, one side is below grade and the other side's not.
Whatever is above grade at its highest point,
You're counting it from the toe.
that's how I look at it.
Okay.
So that definition above or below grade would change that on interpretation. If we went 3 feet below ground to, a cross step.
So I would like to exempt stone walls from that definition of structure. I mean, they're not currently an issue, but it, I think you want to encourage people to put in stone walls. They tend to be attractive.
Wouldn't that be grandfathered in because you have a lot of areas that have stone walls?
Yeah, well, whatever's there is there,
Right.
but still.
Couldn't the building inspector just interpret it not to be a structure
Yeah.
without putting it in?
Yeah, but
Down county, they interpret fences to be structures, they do permits for fencing down below.
well, when it's over 6 feet in many places, fences are subject to permits and are structures. But below 6 feet, it's pretty rare.
Okay, so we've defined a pool as a structure. Is it
Yeah.
impervious or pervious?
That's not something we
We
got
don't need
into.
to.
There is a diversity of opinion on that.
I don't think we need to debate that, though.
What if somebody puts a 5,000 square foot pool on their property? I mean, that's a significant lot coverage issue.
So,
I think we have to,
people.
unless we're gonna leave it to the town board to do that.
Well, I mean, it's never been defined.
I mean,
It's not defined in most codes.
You're defining the pool as a structure,
Yes,
Right.
which then goes into the definition of building coverage and site coverage.
yes, I am.
Right, so site coverage is capping the max coverage on the lot.
Right, including pervious and impervious.
I'm defining it as a structure, so it's already in the site coverage number.
Regardless of whether it's pervious or not,
Yes.
it's a structure.
But we
So
don't,
it's
but
in
we
the site
but we don't know
coverage.
if it's part of the building coverage.
It's not
It's
part of the building
it-
coverage.
It's part of the site coverage.
Part of the site.
But it's not part of the building coverage?
Correct.
It would be accessory coverage.
Oh, I see, he's got a point. I mean,
It would.
if you considered it to be an impervious structure, then it would be,
That would be part of the building
you could
coverage.
argue it would be included in building coverage.
I think we should almost say that,
'Cause
maybe we should take it out of impervious. So I think we have to somehow define a pool because a lot of people put in pools.
Pools.
And pools are big. Pools have a lot of square footage you're at.
Building coverage says it includes impervious structures. We've said that a pool is a structure. It,
We can
Is
say,
likely
we can
impervious.
accept pools from the building, proposed definition of building coverage? That would resolve that.
But then would that leave it a question as to whether it's a structure or not?
No, it's
still a structure. Definitely a
Still
structure.
structure, but we're just saying it's not building coverage, but it's part of site coverage.
So we're saying it's a pervious surface.
No, I'm not saying that.
We're just saying it's not a structure?
No, we're saying it's a structure.
We're saying it's
We're
a,
not saying whether it's pervious or impervious.
Yeah,
we're not concluding on that.
All we're doing is taking out
Because I
building
think that,
coverage.
because if we're going to consider what our building coverage and site coverage is, I think I have to know how a pool is classified to determine if our
Okay,
percentages
but
are reasonable.
we can accept it from the building coverage proposed definition.
So we can say all buildings and/or impervious
Structures.
structures, excluding pools.
Yep.
Okay, then
On the
that
lot.
that would,
Yeah.
that would make, because, yeah, that would make me more comfortable, putting excluding pools in there.
Yeah.
Above and below ground pools, right?
And then someone's gonna come along, by the way, and look at that and say,
Yeah.
pools are certainly impervious. Because you wouldn't have done that exclusion if you hadn't done it. But that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
I mean, I guess they collect water, but I guess they could overflow. right?
Well, no, the reason sometimes people call them pervious is because you do have a fair amount of water which disappears from the pool, right?
Yeah.
Right?
From
we have,
There's no
evaporation.
runoff.
I think it's distinguishing between the pool itself and then the area around the pool, whatever that material may be. I don't think we need to go into that
Yeah,
discussion. I think
it's-
that's where the debate between pervious and impervious lies when
Well,
people
it-
classify a pool.
technically the pool, no water goes through the pool. But because the water,
Evaporates.
some towns,
It doesn't run off.
some towns make a distinction when you have a cover, because now you're not evaporating at the same rate. But once again, most codes don't go into this level of detail because you get into these picayune things, which,
And then you pigeonhole yourself.
yeah.
Or if you included in site coverage, would you rather put it in site coverage and say the combined area of all building structures, impervious surfaces, including impervious driveways, pools, patios, and walkways?
Yeah, I would like that.
I prefer that. I think that's a better iteration
Then adding it to
than
building.
excluding it from building.
That's fine for
coverage.
site coverage.
Yeah.
And then we're inferring that it's a
Yep.
impervious surface.
It's just that pools are so prevalent in town, and they're so big, they're not like a little doghouse, they're a significant issue, and I think that's important, yeah.
That's better, yeah.
I like that.
And, you know, town board can take this and refine it better and do what they want, but at least we're giving them our best shot at this thing. Yeah.
No, that's a good addition.
Well, if we give it the best shot, they should take it the way it comes. They're not gonna spend time with this. They're
Well,
gonna-
they're
I mean,
the bosses.
they may refer it to the town planner to
They
get
may.
his direct opinion.
Yep.
May want to
sure.
talk to Tom, our building
Talk to
inspector, about it
Tom,
also.
sure.
Yeah, that's fine. You know, they may think of something we haven't. All right, so I think we can revise this accordingly, and
And that,
we'll send one.
Did I hear those final words? We're gonna actually
Well, I
send
don't know.
it out?
If
Oh, I was waiting to
There's
hear that.
only one town board meeting in November, so, now, if we could get
I'll
that
send-
out in
I'll-
time, so.
I'll make these couple of changes tomorrow. I'll send it out to everybody.
and we'll
and
address it
then-
one way or another tomorrow.
And then, I'll probably say in the email, if nobody provides any negative feedback, then Denise will send it out in so many days.
Sounds good.
Immediately.
Sounds good to me.
Yes.
Okay.
Just to put a fuse on it.
Okay.
Okay,
Is that it?
that's it.
Okay. Any other issues or anything else you want to discuss? So everybody take a look at this tomorrow, the revised one,
Sounds good.
Yes.
and let's comment and, you know, what was that?
We're still on, right?
Yes, we're still on. Yeah. All right, and then, you know, let's get back to Denise so that we can get something over to town board. Okay, any other issues we need to discuss before we wrap up the meeting this evening?
Nope.
No.
Okay, thank you, everybody, for your input. Hopefully, with all of us discussing it, we get to a good answer here, so. Okay, all right, good night, everyone. That concludes the meeting, and as I mentioned before, our next meeting is November 16, 2021, right here in the Townhouse. And that's going to be it for this evening. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.